Hi, thanks for stopping by. This is Dan. Today I am drawing one of the new prompts for the Inktober52 challenge. The prompt was bubble on this particular one. I wanted to talk real quickly about what I'm hoping to incorporate as a more solid part of my process, which is using thumbnail sketches and idea webs or just quick train of thought types writing of what I think when I read the prompt. So if you're not familiar, and I know I've talked about it in the past, but the Inktober52 challenge is they'll put up a word on Thursdays and you will just do the challenge and input whatever you come up with on social media with an appropriate hashtag. This one was bubble, so I want to make it a process where I'm doing thumbnail sketches and word lists, and in this particular one, I had a couple ideas. I did draw the dirty bubble from SpongeBob, if you're familiar with the evil league of villains from that show, all the Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes. That's over on my Instagram at Dan Kinzila Art. Feel free to go check it out. I'd appreciate you taking the time to check the page out. That's where I post all my work and my most common social media channel is going to be on Instagram. The goal for this particular one, thumbnail sketches. If you're not familiar, thumbnail sketches are super helpful in coming up with ideas without dedicating a whole lot of time. The concept is that you just make a little square on your sketch pad and put in the shapes of what you want to draw and kind of work out perhaps where the shading will be, what the composition will be, and they'll just be 10 to 15 minute sketches, if that, probably much quicker, where you can just figure out exactly what you're looking to do composition-wise and then bring it over to a larger scale for the actual drawing. And that's what I'm hoping to do more of. I always feel like I get better ideas and more fleshed out final products when I go in with a more solid plan. This particular sketch for bubble is going to be, my end goal was to have kind of a swelling bubble effect with 2-point perspective on the drawing and all of these little structures in the drawing adhering to 2-point perspective. The goal wasn't totally successful. So to get a fisheye lens or an otherwise bulbous appearance, you are going to want to use 6-point perspective. It sounds like a lot of vanishing points, but it is what's necessary. If you're familiar with that M.C. Escher drawing or painting where the guy's sitting in a room holding up a reflective silver ball and you see the room in that warped view, that's 6-point perspective. It's basically a curved grid that all of your lines adhere to. Another artist that's very proficient in this particular method of drawing is Kim Jung-gi. He's a Korean illustrator, Kimjung-gi, 3 words, that's his name. I will warn you, he has some pretty racy content sometimes, so if you just Google Kim Jung-gi drawings, you're probably going to see some nudity or violence, so keep that in mind if you are interested in looking up that artist. Well, I cannot do 6-point perspective. I was using 2-point perspective throughout this whole thing. If you're not familiar, the gist is that you're going to have your horizon line. That is the little dot right in the middle of the drawing, and it goes from the left side of the page to the right side of the page. And then on either side of the page, you'll have your vanishing points. You can do 1-point perspective as well, with just the dot in the middle, and all of your lines will run to the 1 dot. But with 2-point, you'll have your structure, and dependent upon whether the box is above or below the horizon line determines which vanishing point your lines run to. I want to use the long L-shaped block right in the middle of the drawing as an example. You can see that the left face of the structure is running off to the left vanishing point, and the right face is running down to the right vanishing point. The neat thing about having the horizon line and everything is that it's pretty easy to tell if you should be able to see the top or the bottom of the structure. So that L-shaped block, the very top, you can't see the top of the box, but with the long part coming out from the curved structure, you can see the top of that. So that's the gist of two-point perspective. It's fairly easy to do. If you have a piece of paper, just draw a long horizon line and then a perpendicular line to that, so straight up and down, and then choose two vanishing points on either side of your perpendicular line. Get a straight edge like a ruler. Just go from the top of the perpendicular line and have it go all the way to either vanishing point. Do the same for the bottom, and you should have a diamond shape on your page. Throw in two more perpendicular lines wherever you want the box to end, and then you've got a 3D box in perspective. You can move around your perpendicular lines to change the dimensions of the box. You can move your vanishing points closer or further away from that initial perpendicular line in order to make the perspective more extreme. This is seen on that curved structure there. You can see that the top part of the curved structure, it's very narrow, but when it gets to the point with the rounded edges, it's pretty wide. That's the gist of perspective. So, give it a shot on any paper you have lying around. It's a lot of fun, and it's one of those things that looks complicated to draw, and then you do it, and it feels pretty thrilling. My original idea of this drawing was to have some futuristic cityscape stuff going on. All these shapes would have windows and add-ons like AC units and pipes and things like that. I didn't end up following through with that because I ran out of time and I was feeling pretty burnt out by the end of this with all of the perspective that I was trying to adhere to. I think a future goal would be good to just spend some more time getting those details hashed out and getting it to where I want it to be as far as the original vision goes. Instead of putting in all those details, I decided to practice shading again. This time I simplified it down from a 6-value scale to a 3-value scale. The 3 values are going to be those heavy close hash marks that you see on the quote-unquote bottom of the structure, and then these more distant hash marks that are on the sides of the structure. The 3rd value will be no hash marks at all, and that's going to be on the sides of the structure that are facing the light source, which would just be the tops on this big, almost pyramid-like structure. You can see that I've got all 3 values. On the left-hand side of the pyramid, it's completely white, and then value 2, value 3 on the bottom. I hope that makes sense. It's just trying to communicate that I'm looking to break up the drawing into 3 distinct values. And then you can see at certain points where the values should be blocked by a different structure, they get blocked. So I think it was decently successful. If I were to spend more time on something, I think it would be just taking more time and making sure that my shading values are more consistent than they were. There's a lot of success in the drawing with it, but a lot of failure as well. As for the background, I wanted to break it up. I wanted some more noodly, curvy background stuff to look at, and that kind of juxtaposed with the really rigid edges and the perspective rules. So I decided to go into this sort of nonsensical tube thing, basically just focusing on doing all sorts of rounded edges and filling up all the empty space in the back with lighter hash marks, not so strict on the shading, and just having these noodles go all over the place. It was a good time. I think that my favorite part of the drawing actually ended up just being the background, even though it was the least time intensive. If I had to say why, I would reckon that while my perspective was pretty accurate and the use of straight edges just made the process a lot easier and more consistent, it's pretty boring, if I'm being honest, to look at, whereas the background was a bit more interesting and more creatively engaging to draw. So, yeah, I guess if I were to do it again, maybe I would try predominantly these curvy, weird noodly shapes and then put the hard perspective rules in the background. If I were to do things differently, I would probably use thicker pens on the start. on some of these close-up shots, you can see that I use the tools such as a straight edge and a compass to get that straight first line, and then I went freehand. Now, I think it's good practice to do freehand work, but it kind of results in the messier version. I used to have it in my head that it would be more legitimate to get this perspective down if I could do it just mentally picturing the vanishing points, and surely that would be a very useful skill to have, but I was kind of trying to walk before I could run. So my plan is to do more drawings with the use of tools and then move towards a mental vanishing point in the future. I hope that all makes sense. Feel free to comment if there's anything I could clarify. I'd be happy to do so. Please subscribe if you have not yet done so. Those numbers mean a lot to me. And also feel free to give a like if you want. Come on over to the Instagram page. Be happy to hear from you. Thanks a lot for spending the time watching this, and hope you have a great day. Bye-bye.